Most of you probably have at least, or at most, $500 in your bank account. But can you turn that around into millions of dollars in a couple of years? Honestly, you can. But will you be able to? It may seem an impossible feat, and perhaps it is, but definitely not for Davie Fogarty. But as you can expect, it's not been an easy journey.
There's always times that I doubted myself through the journey, but the main thing is to just never give up, constantly keep learning, and just really at least try to enjoy the process as well. Enjoy the process of learning.
And that's exactly what he did. It may sound cliche, but the last thing that Davie did was to trust the process. Although Davie Fogarty is now a fast-rising internet personality with over 300,000 followers on YouTube and over 100,000 on Insta, you probably wouldn't have guessed that he used to be an insecure kid. You know, the type of kid who would rather swim with their shirt on than off, no matter how uncomfortable it is to do so. Fortunately, he had a supportive family growing up, so his childhood wasn't all that bad. His parents, despite their extremely busy schedules because of their business, made sure to be there for him emotionally. He did, however, watch his parents work very hard to support him financially. His family had a small furniture business in Adelaide, where he grew up. And because he would usually go and watch them sell furniture after school, he felt very guilty that his parents' hard work to be able to send him to school seemed not to be paying off, especially since he found studying incredibly difficult.
I was told that I was stupid at a very young age, especially through primary school, and I believed it. It was probably exacerbating my insecurities, and I just never tried.
At the time, he was constantly arguing with teachers and therefore was just as frequent a visitor to detention as most. Needless to say, his school life was not an easy one, but it specifically took a sour turn when 5 of his teachers, in a parent-teacher interview, informed his parents that he was failing and that he was difficult to teach. It was the straw that broke the camel's back, so to speak. His parents gave an ultimatum: start working hard, transfer to another school, or worst of all, they would stop supporting him altogether. It goes without saying that it was his much-needed wake-up call. Davie Fogarty has always had a passion for business, starting things off at an early age by baking and selling biscuits at school. But his early start came with one of his first lessons in how business works, sharing that his mother made him pay her back for ingredient costs. It also helped that he grew up seeing his parents run a small furniture shop. And so his positive relationship with the business world began early, even starring in an ad when he was young. Davie basically started by baking biscuits to sell at school, and by 16 ran a side hustle reselling products on eBay. I think the thing that attracts me to business is that there are always new challenges to solve, he admitted. Since school, I've always had a keen interest in business and a desire to become successful one day. I wasn't really interested in university, nor did I have the passion or discipline for it, so I chose to pursue business. My first business was opening a cafe selling rolls, which ended up being one of my biggest failures and greatest learning curves. After his parents gave him an ultimatum, he started to study and find a job. His first job was to move things around in a warehouse where he earned $16 an hour. He then used that money to go to the gym. It's the place where he learned to improve his mental and physical health. As for his studies, he hired a tutor to help him with subjects he was struggling with, and there had been a significant improvement in his performance in just a year. When it was time to choose a profession, he decided on mining engineering, simply because he was informed that it was a 6-figure job. It hadn't been too long before he ultimately failed university. However, it's important to point out that he didn't fail simply because he chose a difficult program, but because he was not entirely focused on studying. He was so passionate about business that he was constantly launching new things. At the time, he was selling singlets and hats. Simply put, he began getting serious in his business ventures after finishing high school. He started making a fair amount on Instagram. He initially went to supplemental stores, took photos of the supplements, and wrote reviews. He was able to sell advertising of those on Instagram. As can be expected, it started small, with an earning of $5 to $10 here and there. Seeing that he was at least earning something, he created more Instagram accounts that feature various niches, from workouts to nutrition to cooking recipes and more. In time, he was able to make the six-figure income he hoped to have when he chose a career in mining engineering. But he didn't stop there. He then went into the fitness industry. At the time, he owned numerous burner phones and eventually had $100,000 in his bank account. With that amount, he built a food franchise in Adelaide. He basically worked non-stop in his Vietnamese roll shop business in addition to his Instagram venture. That said, he worked about 16 hours a day. Despite this, the food business was fast going down the drain, but at least the Instagram side was working well. Or so he thought. By this time, he was flipping Instagram, basically buying accounts and then selling them to other people for a bit of a higher price. It was going well, too well actually, when he had his biggest buy, a $40,000 account. However, it didn't take him long to learn that the said account was hacked and was then returned to its original owner. His $40,000 basically vanished into thin air. It wasn't the only time he failed, unfortunately. In fact, he had a string of failed business attempts. He started an iPhone case business, tried his hand at personal training, attempted a seasoning business, and developed a weighted toy brand for kids, all of which turned out to be bad business decisions on his part. Unsurprisingly, Davie Fogarty was not in a good place after all of these failures.
The drain, and I got into a very, very dark place. I remember completely being disorientated in the bathroom, mentally just not even there, with a lot of bad thoughts.
But as always, his family had his back. His father even taught him a valuable lesson.
These mistakes, if you carry them with you, they're just going to hurt you. Just learn from them and move on. So I knew I needed it.
With that, he got his, shit together and made new plans. He worked in social media marketing for companies including Alinta Bar, The Fifth, and Skinny Me Tea. He also took it upon himself to learn about photography, videography, Facebook ads, and Google ads, among others. Still, he did not give up on the idea of launching his own business.
I remember checking my bank account, I was back at $0. It felt like I was back at square one. I had $0, I was back living with my parents, but my mind and the knowledge that I had was just...
All he needed was a new product to launch. While looking around for products, he came across an article on Facebook that talks about how weighted blankets can help people with sensory disorders or insomnia. After researching more, he took the plunge. With his last $500 he had in his bank account, he began selling weighted blankets. He bought stocks and decided to pre-sell the products. This is when you sell stocks that aren't in the country yet. It takes a lot of trust and includes a lot of risks, don't you think? And, unfortunately, it was a risk he took and so suffered from it. The stock was about 5 weeks delayed, but he already had about 400 customers. His first 400 customers for big business were waiting 5 weeks to get their stock. After a while, and it literally took a while, the border security finally released the stock. So, 5 weeks after the promised date, his first 400 customers received their orders.
And it was just the most ecstatic feeling. I was just off from there. I did about $200 in the first day, $1,000 in the first week, $10,000 in the second month, ended up scaling to doing $1.5 million profit in its first year.
The idea of the weighted blankets then expanded to include wearable ones, and thus the Oodie was born. The Oodie and calming blankets came out in 2018. This quickly developed into the Davie Group, a group that encompasses multiple e-commerce brands as well as a recently developed software tool. The group has already launched more than 10 brands, including weighted blankets and calming dog beds, the result of testing hundreds of products each month. Davie's bold and ultimate ambition is to launch up to 1,000 different products across 300 new brands in a single year. Today, Davie Fogarty, the self-made millionaire from Adelaide, Australia, is inspiring young entrepreneurs with the story of how he went from having only $500 to accumulating a net worth of $500 million in just 5 years. So, want to hear more success stories like Davie's? Let us know in the comment section below.